All right, welcome along, Jess. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for allowing me to share this with people that follow on YouTube and along the Facebook channel. So I'm chatting with Jess, having a post-race debrief after her very successful New Zealand Half Marathon Championship yesterday, where she won the New Zealand Under 20 Women's category with a super fast time. So we'll work through a few different phases and have a chat about different aspects of the event and your build up. So, obviously, the event was the Wellington Half Marathon, which doubled as the NZ Half Marathon Championships. That was yesterday on the 29th of June. And the race distance was the standard half marathon, 13.1 miles or 21.1 kilometres. Now, did you have a goal time in mind, Jess?
Well, I knew I kind of wanted to go sub 125, especially with my old PB being 127, 126-ish, depending if I look at the official or unofficial time. But then I knew that like off of what my watch had told me and like a few of my trainings that a little bit quicker could be possible. So sub 125 was my ultimate goal, especially knowing that that was kind of a key point for some events to be considered elite. So that was probably my main goal would be to go sub 125.
Yeah, and I know what time you've done. I've looked online, seen the results. I've also seen your data come through on Training Peaks. What time did you do?
Well, officially, I did a 124, 104, depending if you look at the net time or the chip time. But if you go off my watch, it was a 123.09. So
Yep.
a
So
bit.
we'll always go off the race time
Yeah.
at the sharp end of the field from when that gun goes until you cross that finish line. That is the time. Admittedly, with your we could time it a little bit quicker by 3 seconds if we say we use the net time from when you cross that finish line. I know you were near the start of the start line, as opposed to the few thousand people that still cross the start line after you to start their event. We know you can cover the distance a little bit quicker based on the GPS on your watch. I think overall the course will typically measure a little bit long because no one really gets to run the best line they want, especially in major events like that.
Yeah.
So we'll stick with that 124.03, which is still comfortably under the 125 goal. So well done on that. How did you feel your training went leading up to the race?
I think my training felt pretty strong, especially with all of my studies. Like I was able to hit every single training. I don't think there was one that I missed going into it. I don't think every training was perfect, but I still moved through each of them, getting them all done pretty much in the mornings out before uni, but I felt like I was definitely improving as it went, especially with my zone two increasing after the Christchurch 10K. It took me about a month to get comfortable to that pace, but seeing how quickly I could adjust to that pace made me pretty confident in my ability to try get that PB.
Yeah, and there was one particular session last week that we'll say it was a little bit of a wobble based on your level of consistency and the high standards you set yourself. Compared to other athletes I coach, that was well within the zones of sticking with the plan, but it was a little bit outside what's normal for you. What do you think worked well for your training leading up to the Wellington Half Marathon?
For me, it's probably consistency, just making sure I get them all done, as well as just keeping it before in the morning to make sure I get them out of the way and when I'm the most fresh and focused on it when I first wake up.
Yep.
Also, a key thing is having the variation in training where I'm not just running, I have the swimming and cycling as well to give me different like stimulus and enjoyment because I'm not just always doing the same thing. I've got intervals on the bike, or I've got easy on the bike, long on the run, short on the run, a variation. So I do enjoy that to make it more interesting.
Yeah, I know you've heard me say it, and athletes I coach are familiar with it. Consistency is the key, and that consistent training is one of the things that makes you, in particular, excel. Also, the other disciplines that I know you're training effectively as a triathlete, but you're not a triathlete anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
The The swimming and the cycling give really good, as you mentioned, training stimulus, but they're really efficient for the aerobic conditioning of the aerobic system, as well as unloading your body or loading it in a different way. So the cycling, we're getting you off your legs, but still working the legs, working the heart and lungs. Same with swimming, we're getting you totally off the legs, and still working the heart and lungs. You're still a talented swimmer despite doing two, I'll say, relatively toned down swim sessions compared to what you used to do when swimming was your primary focus. And the long bike ride is one of your key sessions. We're loading up that aerobic efficiency and not smashing the legs with the impact of running. How was your nutrition and hydration in the days before the race?
I'm not one to perfectly like count out my carbs or carb load or anything like that, but I definitely try to focus on making sure I'm not eating too much high fiber foods, especially the day before. Like that would make my stomach probably a bit funny, but lots of carbs, whole foods, just making sure I'm eating enough as well, because it's much better to have too much energy than not enough. So just making sure I have full meals, focusing on the carbs and then a bit of protein to make sure I'm recovering before as well.
Nice. And hydration wise, how did that go?
I usually drink like a bottle of electrolytes or two the day before, like 2 days before, and then I try to drink some before the race, and then post race I try to drink a couple as well, just to make sure I rehydrate all of the electrolytes because I'm quite a sweaty, salty sweater, so get all the salt back in.
Sorry, we'll touch on a little bit more of that a little bit later on, keeping the focus for now on pre-event and having that hydration beforehand. For every gram of carbohydrate that your body stores, it needs 3 grams of water in order to store that. So that extra hydration, drinking that electrolyte drink in the days leading up to it will provide extra carbohydrates that you can tap into during the event. And avoiding that high fiber food helps the prevent gastric discomfort,
Yeah.
which can lead into what gets referred to as the runner's trots, which we want to avoid if we're wanting a successful race day. How about your sleep and stress? How did you manage that leading up to race day?
Well, it was quite difficult with my exams leading up to it. About like a week before, I had exams up till then. And then when I came home before the race, I realized that my body kind of crashed. So I was kind of struggling with my sleep. My sleep score was really low, but I was getting good like 12-hour sleeps because that's just what I naturally was needing. But it was probably 2 days, 3 days before the race, my sleep score was like kind of getting back to where it needed to be. So I was just making sure I slept however long my body wanted to sleep and trying to make sure I was back into that normal zone and not where my watch is telling me I'm super fatigued or anything.
Yep. No, and I'll say it was fortuitous that things sort of timed nicely. If the exams were a little bit closer to race day, that might not have had that ability to recover on the sleep side of things.
Yeah.
The exams will have provided some stress. We were tapering down your training, but luckily there was enough days or nights so you could get that sleep pattern back into it and catch up on things. Well, not so much catch up on the sleep, catch the quality of sleep back up. So that was good that you were tracking that. And we talked about this last week as well. So now, when it comes to the race strategy, we talked about a little bit about the race plan in terms of following the one third, one third, one third pacing strategy. Before we discuss that, because you touched on it before, nutrition during the event, what was your plan?
So I kind of try to stick to what I'm used to when I do my long runs back at home. So I stick with the same gels, the GU gels, because they're the best on my stomach, when I'm running that I find. So for me, I usually take one just before. So I took one just before I raced, and then I had two during the race, one around like 8Ks and one around 16Ks, or when I started to feel that I was thinking I might run out of energy and I might just need a bit of a boost before I fully feel like I crash because I don't want to get to that point. So yeah, I took 3 gels overall, 2 during the race, and then when I'd passed the aid stations, I would usually just grab a cup of normal water and I would just kind of drink a little bit and then or throw the rest of it on me to cool myself down, but just kind of keeping the hydration levels where I can, but I do struggle to drink from a cup when I'm running. So
Yep. A wee tip for that, and I don't have anything here as an example, but if you squeeze it and it will make like a figure of eight, and then you can literally pour it
or
um, into your mouth a lot easier. Um, how well did that nutrition plan work during the event?
I think it definitely worked well, the gels wise. I didn't feel like I crashed at any point or thought I needed more, or didn't have enough. I felt like it was okay. I probably could have had more, but I don't really think I needed more. The hydration was okay. Like I felt like that was fine as well. I don't usually need to drink too much, especially because when I do my training runs of the 27Ks, I don't drink through the whole thing. So my body is pretty used to it. But there was probably one aid station that I wanted water, but I missed it because I was in a big pack and everyone else took the cups. So that was a little bit disappointing. But I knew there were aid stations pretty regularly, so it wasn't too much of a worry.
Yeah. So that sounds like a little bit of an unexpected challenge in terms of being in a bunch and missing the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
You've alluded to via some Facebook messages of I'll say a major unexpected challenge leading in to the race. I'll get you to summarize that quickly, but then also tell me how that impacted your mental state prior to the start of the race.
Well, it was actually a double error. So we were on our way to the event and we were nice on time. And then we were trying to get to the event. We actually took the wrong turn. So we had to go back up the motorway the wrong way. And it probably added almost an extra 10 minutes. So that already stressed me out slightly. And then on our way back to almost get back, I thought I'd just check my bag to try find my shoes when I realized I had taken them out that morning to check them and never put them back. So I also didn't have my race shoes. So that was kind of a bit of an impact as well, but we had to keep going on the motorway to then turn around again. But I decided to make sure I had enough time to warm up. I would just get my mum to drop me off. She would go back and get the shoes while I warmed up with the shoes I was already wearing. So if it came to it, I'd still have my normal Nova Blast shoes, but just not my carbon plated shoes. So
Yeah.
a bit stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. So you sounds like you put together a really smart plan. You were extremely lucky, and I'm sure grateful that your mother was there and you had
Yes.
someone that could race back and get them whilst you warmed up. So having that ability to say, well, this has happened. What can we do about it? What solutions have we got? I could skip my warm up and we could both go back and get it.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was a sound plan put in place, and it wasn't necessarily the original plan, but it worked. And you reconnected with mum, got the race shoes. How close to the race start?
Well, I was also pretty lucky because my sister was here too, so she actually was able to get them off my mum pretty quickly as well. It was probably 10 to 15 minutes before my race. I'd already done my whole warm up and I put my race shoes on, did one set of stride, and then was on the race start. So it was pretty right on time for getting onto the start line. Yeah.
Precision planning, we'll call that.
Yes.
All right. Now, just going to the race plan in terms of the pace plan, the 1/3 method. The plan was to start off at a conservative pace for the first third or just slightly above the third in terms of looking for those easy reference marks. The Evan Bay aid station at the 8K mark was a reference point we'd discussed. And then the same location on the return journey to pick up the pace again. How did that work for you?
It was probably a little bit different to how I was expecting. My legs didn't feel as fresh as they have in other races, but it wasn't like terrible. It just wasn't as normal as I normally felt. When the race went off, I was very much drawn with the pack to like up in front of the 120 pacer, and I knew from that point I needed to slow down. So I pulled myself back a bit and I was kind of in like no man's land. I didn't really have a group of people, but I didn't really want to slow down, but I didn't want to speed up, which was kind of a bit difficult. Um, I let the 125 pacer group slowly catch up to me, and that's the big group that I kind of joined into, and I held on to them for more than half of the race. They were actually going a speed that was better than I was expecting. They were kind of holding the 350s to fours the whole time, so I could kind of tell that they were already kind of going sub 125, so I knew I could hold it slightly longer. When I reached the 8K point, I did try to pull off, but again, there wasn't really sufficient groups ahead to join onto, and it got to the point where I just wasn't feeling ready to make a move. So I joined back onto the 125 pace group until about 9Ks to go, and that's when we decided to pull off with a few other people and go from there.
Nice. No, the concept worked, although it might not have been religiously stuck to due to some, and it's often the case, the enthusiasm of everyone around you at the start of a race and in the early stages has that flow-on effect of pulling you along. Now, I don't have all your case splits in front of me, but in terms of that first third, you're 357, the middle third 355, and then 356 for the final third. And now these are normalized graded paces, so that it's effectively doing some maths to take the hills out and give an average there. And your average, or sorry, your normalized power for those same segments was there or thereabouts, very close to the same, with a couple of watts different for that final third. How did your body feel during the race? You sort of touched on the fact that your legs didn't feel as fresh during it. What do you think caused that?
I'm not really sure. I think it was probably a bit of self-doubt, especially as well, like going into the race, knowing that I had the exams and didn't really have as high as like I didn't think I could do as well as I did. I had a bit of self-doubt, and so when I was running, I think I was overthinking a bit. Um, it could have just been, I honestly don't know why. It could have been a bit cold. That seems to be a thing in my training where if it's a bit cold, my legs feel a little bit too tired. So it might have just needed to warm up a bit because they didn't really get any worse. They kind of stayed the same. Like I didn't feel like they hit the wall at any point, which was like a key thing I didn't want to happen. Um, I did feel okay throughout, but I never felt amazing, but I never really hit a wall yet, as I said.
Okay. What about any cramps, any issues with that?
No, I was actually pretty lucky I didn't have any of that. My stomach felt a little bit funny throughout it a little bit, so I made sure to drink a little bit of water, I think, when I passed the next aid station, but it never got to a point where I was super uncomfortable or in discomfort, so that was good.
Nice. What part of the race felt strongest?
Probably the middle section. So when coming into the last part, when I pulled off of the 125 group, it was about almost 9Ks to go, and the lead of the pacer of the 125 said that he had pulled us about 30 seconds ahead of what he was meant to be, which was a good thing. So we were probably sitting at about 124 and a half pace. And then there was just a guy in front of me, and we, from that point, just kind of surged, and I felt quite good to just keep going at that pace. And so that's when I kind of picked up the pace. I think there was a few Ks where I was going 350s, and I could hold that with the guy that I went with. And that was probably when I felt the best. And then at about 4Ks to go was when it was the real mental battle to get to the finish line.
Yep. And that, I'll call it a climb up onto the stadium concourse. Uh, it's it's minuscule, but it's so challenging at that point in the race.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. And
yeah.
would you describe that as the toughest part, or some other point was a little bit tougher?
I would say the last few Ks I really felt it. Like I really just wanted to stop, but I was like, I can't stop. But I would look at my pace and I'd be like, I'm still doing a fine pace. I think I was around the fours. I think Strava showed my single K, so I can look that I dropped slowly, but not terribly. So I kind of just had to keep pulling myself. But knowing I had a thought in those last few Ks where I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go back up that hill. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, it was definitely something I was thinking about that I didn't want to do. Yeah.
Yep. Every time I've done the Wellington Marathon or the half marathon, and it's been over, I'm going to say nearly 12, 13 years since I last did it. Yeah, I on the old marathon course, you used to go up some of the hills around the back, past Branda and a few other places that are tough hills, especially the return back over past Branda. It's a lot steeper. Um, Despite the height and the steepness of those hills, that last climb into the stadium, whether I was doing the 5K, whether I was doing the 10K, the half, or the full,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that was always the toughest part of the event.
Yeah.
Mm.
Definitely. I think like because I was pushing so hard to just get to the finish line that I was like, if I push too hard now, will I be able to get up that hill? That was all I was kind of thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. We'll move on to the mental side of your performance. How did you manage the mindset and focus during the race? You've already sort of talked about the challenges at the end there. How did you mentally overcome that and push through? Because looking at your pace, it didn't really slow down that much.
Hmm. I really just told myself the quicker I run, the quicker it's over. Um, another another key thing when I'm racing is I just think after the race, I'm not going to be in this pain and I'll be more proud of myself the harder I push. And if I give up at that point, I will look back at it and be disappointed. Like I'd rather give it my all and then maybe something happen than like feel good because I just slowed down at that point. Like I didn't want to have that. Like, I don't want to look back. I want to be proud of that. I kind of just tell myself that I can do this. My training run is like an extra 6Ks on top of what I was doing then. So I could do it, obviously not at the same pace. Um, but like if I push, like I knew I could keep going if I kept pushing. And I usually try to have a guy or whoever's around me in front of me and I try to just stick to them and I'm like if they can do it I can do it, you know what I mean? If they can get this far I can too.
Absolutely. Um, you you're far too young to remember, but I'm sure your mother will be able to remind you that growing up in the 80s, there was a very big campaign in New Zealand. Um, I'm just trying to remember what it was, and I try and put this to my daughter as well that anything boys can do, girls can do better. I can't
Yes.
remember the exact wording of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
100% right. So
Yeah. Well, it definitely gives me joy when I'm like just surrounded beating all these men, you know. It's
yeah,
kind of yeah.
and that's every race for you. Were there any negative thoughts that snuck in? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I usually just have a lot of like, I can't do this. I just want to give up. It would be so much easier to give up. Why am I doing this to myself? All of those kind of thoughts. Especially when you're not at halfway yet. That's kind of like there's still more than that. But as soon as I get to halfway, I'm like, I'm already halfway there. I just need to run home now. That's a lot of I like to run out and backs because then I have to get home. I usually just tell myself that I'm strong enough and that I'll be proud of myself at the finish if I get there. And just I have to just think of how proud of myself I am, how far I have come either way. But yeah, just try to get rid of those negative thoughts and just think of the positives. Yeah.
Awesome. What kept your motivation through the tough moments?
Um, just knowing the amount of work that I've put into it and the amount of sacrifices that I've done to like get to the point where I am is probably what I think about the most.
Awesome. Now, a bit of a reflection time. What went well overall?
I think overall, my consistency and my pace, I'm glad that it didn't just drop at any point. So I'm glad that I didn't go out too hard and I listened to you and I made sure to, even though at the start, like your legs just feel like they're flying. And I'm like, I can stick with this 120 pace. So I had to like kind of bring myself back to reality and think, hold up, you've still got another 20 Ks to go. I probably should hold it back a bit and then release myself later on because I'd prefer to finish feeling stronger and then die in the last few Ks than die in the last half. That would be kind of horrible. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, it is horrible, and we talked about this before the race. It's knowing where that point is and pushing to that point in some races, not the national champs, but in some low key races, so you get that experience. I've been humbled a few times where I've had to walk home from 20 something K mark in a marathon because I had not necessarily gone out too fast, but tried pushing the pace too much through the middle section. So it's a learning curve. You don't necessarily want the big lessons that I've learned in some of my events, but you want to also push that boundary a little bit so that you know how close to the boundary you can go in the key races.
Yeah.
What would you change or improve for your next race?
Um, it's kind of tough to know like how differently I can race. I think the more half marathons I do, the more I'll know where I'm best to push in my races because I've still only properly raced two or three now. So there's still a lot of learning to do there. I would maybe try a few different fueling strategies, different like speed up zones. I'd probably test a lot of things. Only doing a few so far makes it a little bit hard to know what I can and can't do. But yeah, so.
Okay. And what did you learn about yourself as an athlete from the New Zealand champs?
Um, that I don't give myself enough credit sometimes, that like I am an athlete. I sometimes don't think of myself as an athlete, so I probably should start thinking that. Um, but yeah, I should probably just be proud of the amount of work that I've put into it over the last half year, especially with starting uni and everything. So
Absolutely. And you're a very talented athlete. Don't think of yourself as a jogger. Think of yourself as a top tier athlete because you're giving, and like you said, the categorization for an elite female runner at some events is 125, some events it's a little bit quicker. But you are pushing those boundaries and are in zone and in contention for that. So don't don't downplay your capabilities.
yeah.
So looking ahead to the next steps, building up towards the Dunedin half, we'll be backing off your training a little bit, allowing some recovery for a few weeks, and then we'll be building into it. What are your goals for Dunedin?
Um, I definitely from this race know that I have a lot more to give. Um, Feeling into it. I really want to still enjoy it. That's the one thing that I always go into races is just knowing that I want to enjoy it because that's why I started running and why I moved away from swimming and triathlons. Um, I mean, a PB is always nice, but so that would probably be the first goal. I'm not really sure time-wise, but that would be probably something to think about. But probably just feeling stronger in myself and when I'm running and going into it with a bit more of an idea and a plan of what I could achieve. Because going into this, I was a little bit unsure completely. I was kind of just like, let's go. So it's a bit hard to like feel happy about how I did, not knowing if like I had quite a variation of what I could achieve. So knowing a little bit more of an idea on that and just building up to be the best I can again, working it in with my study. So I'm quite happy with how I was doing that. So probably just keeping up with that and keeping everything balanced.
Yeah. And half marathons and marathons are funny beasts compared to racing on the track. You don't have the consistency of the course or the terrain. So each course for a half marathon is different. And what's achievable on one course is not necessarily achievable on another course. Dunedin, the topography is very similar to Wellington. So similar capability would be an expected outcome. I believe you can go with a few more months training, you can go a little bit quicker. How much quicker? We will make some estimated, educated guesses closer to the time. But with your continual development as an athlete. If you look at your performance improvement from the Auckland Half Marathon last year through to yesterday, you can see that big step up. We don't have as much time between events this time around to build and develop that big step up, but I believe we can still develop a step up from where you were at yesterday as you continue to grow and develop. What key areas will you want to focus on improving for Dunedin?
Probably my finish. So I that's where I usually struggle the most mentally in races and in training. So it's like probably trying to dig just to that little bit deeper in the ends to keep that speed going and not just always drop off because sometimes I notice like in the training run before the half marathon a week or so ago it was in that last part where I kind of hit a wall and I just couldn't get back out of it. So probably just focusing on fatiguing myself and trying to dig deep
Yeah.
in that
And
area.
you might recall when we caught up and had a chat a few months ago, we talked about the progressive runs, how I might only have one or two of them leading into Wellington, um, because the focus has been building your aerobic base. Now that
Yeah,
we've built that aerobic base, we'll downplay, drop your training back a little bit, allow that recovery to occur. We'll have a period of time with the long runs building the aerobic base a little bit more, but we'll do more of those progressive runs that challenged you in the lead up to Dunedin. There's probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 weeks we will do them back to back. And that's finishing those progressive runs, building that pace, building that power, building that intensity towards the end of it, and then having a cool down is going to be key for developing your strong finish in the
yeah.
half marathon. So that is something that will be being worked on. And what's one thing you'll do differently next time, either in the immediate build up to the event or during the event itself?
I mean, I would definitely make sure I have my shoes with me to avoid the stress. Especially down in Dunedin, I won't have my mum with me. I'll just be me. But at least I'm from Dunedin, so at least it will be close by, and I'll probably have my car so I can do it myself. But again, the stress doesn't help. So that'll be one thing, just making sure I'm on time, just being calm. I probably will also try to make sure I've got all my sleep and recovery built up towards it a lot better, but I won't have exams leading into it the same type of exams. I might have a test or so. So that will probably help as well. But yeah, just making sure I try to hit all of my nutrition right as well to get the most out of the trainings as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks for your time today, Jess. Congratulations on yet another amazing title and a sensational run. Yeah, all the best, and I look forward to having another chat with you again soon about another amazing result.
Thank you.